Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Living the Sweet Life. I'm your host, TJ Sweet, and on this podcast, I'm going to be talking about different ways that can help you live with intention, reshape your mindset, and look at the world through a grateful lens. I just want to thank you for dedicating time to listening to these episodes every week on Mindset Monday. Take a minute to subscribe so that you get notifications when these episodes come out every week. It's good to have reminders that personal growth matters, and sometimes just relying on memory is not perfect. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you get notifications whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or iTunes. So this week is going to be about a topic that was brought to me by somebody that's near and dear to me, but it was really an important topic, and it's really kind of honestly had me in my head and had me in my feels a lot, but it's been really good. I think oftentimes we overlook the things that need attention that are going to make us grow the most because it requires some vulnerability. So you're probably going to see some of that today with this episode, and really the topic is encouraging you to be the person that you needed when you were younger, or be the person that you really needed the most while you were growing up, while you were a child, whatever chapter of life you want to kind of point this back to. And I'm really kind of pointing this back to my younger years and really thinking about, who I was and where my headspace was back then. But really, who did I need to be, or who can I be now that would have been great for that person then, that different version of me? And the first thing I'll say is I had great parents, I had great family, and very supportive, and I'm just understanding now as somebody older in life, just understanding that they were doing the best that they could. And so giving them some grace. There's definitely no grudge. There's definitely no victimhood here. This is really just about stopping and thinking about, who I needed and who I want to become for that person back then. And oftentimes we overlook our own role in our own growth. But we have to understand, before we become something for somebody else, we have to become that for ourselves. We can't give away something we don't have. Focusing on maybe some things that you haven't healed from yet when you were younger is important. It's probably the one thing that most of us need to move out of the way, is understanding the things that we haven't completely healed from, that maybe we've spent our entire adult life trying to overcome, trying to heal. Maybe it is trying to heal from, or maybe it's trying to hide from. So I'm going to run through some of the things in my life that I needed, that I'm trying to show up today, knowing that my younger self needed it. As a child, as I step back and think about how I felt, and I shared this in one of my books, but I went through some times of depression and anxiety, and there were even some chapters of suicidal thoughts. And really getting back, as this episode kind of got presented as a topic, I really had to think back, how did I get there? How did I get to that headspace? And why am I not in that headspace now? And so much of where I was then was needing so many things that I didn't feel like I could communicate. And it wasn't because the people around me wouldn't listen, but I didn't have the ability or maybe the time or the space to actually share what I needed the most. And I needed then some of these things, and I'll just kind of list off these things and I'll kind of talk about them throughout the episode. But really, I needed appreciation, but not with expectations. I needed security of relationships, and this is multifaceted, but understanding that I didn't have to, I was going to be loved whether I earned it or not. I grew up a lot feeling like the love that I was getting was because of something I was doing. It wasn't just because I was who I was. And then earning approval. I felt like I had to earn the approval and make people proud all the time. It was, what have you accomplished? It was meant out of support probably. But really feeling like I had to earn the approval was an always pressure, a sense of pressure that I always had to deal with. But it was also that you're not enough sense that I had. But there's also this sense of performance that I felt like I had to sustain, whether it was a certain GPA, whether it's a 4.0 GPA, or, how many times I went to church, how many times I prayed, how clean my room was, just everything. There was just this always sense of performance. And so I realized while doing the work for this episode and the reflection and the healing for this episode that I was not really intentionally doing this, but I have been trying to heal from some of these things, or trying to hide from some of these things, or how these things have shown up in my relationships. And so for me now, when I love somebody, it's not because they've earned it. It's not conditional. It's not something that they have to work on every day. It's something I'm going to give them every day. And, this idea of I'm going to love you anyway, that's what I needed. Not that it wasn't, the way my parents felt about me, but it's not how it felt as a kid for me. And so actually knowing that I love people regardless of who they are, of what they do, of whether or not they succeed or they fail, and telling people that you love them as often as possible. Again, I didn't have that a ton. It was kind of it was an uncomfortable thing for me, as a kid. And again, so much of it was feeling like I had to earn it. And that's heavy. That's a heavy place to be in all the time, when you feel like you have to succeed and you have to accomplish and you have to be great to be loved. And so the clearest revelation that I have with that is actually saying that, because relying on somebody to assume that, it didn't work for me. And maybe that's the nudge for you, is actually love yourself no matter what. This doesn't mean don't hold yourself accountable. This doesn't mean have high standards for yourself. It means love yourself enough to keep the promises to yourself. Because again, like I said to start this episode, we can't give away something we don't have. And we have to be these things for ourselves first before we can be it for other people. So the way you love yourself is going to show up in how you love others. The way that you respect yourself is also going to show up in how you respect others. The patience you have with yourself will show up in how you're patient for other people. So this episode is, it's caused a lot of self-reflection. It's caused a lot of realizations of how I've been for other people in my life. And the emotion part of it is real. Being vulnerable about it is something that is just what I need to do, right? It can't come from a place of teaching and preaching. It comes from a place of sharing my message in hopes that you recognize kind of what has shaped you to be the person that you are today, and to maybe help you not hate the experiences that shaped you into the person that you are today. And this is this space that's a little uncomfortable, but I'm grateful for everything that's happened in my life, whether it's been good or whether it's in the moment been bad, recognizing that all those moments were really just shaping me. They weren't breaking me. And now we have the opportunity to show up in our own lives and be the person that we needed. And, here's some truth that I've also owned as well. The things that I'm not married yet and don't have any kids yet, but the things that we don't heal from are the things that we pass on. And so this really made me stop and think about, what about my childhood and what about my life have I not healed from yet? What is some of the adversity, the heartbreak, the trauma, whatever words we want to use? What haven't I healed from yet? Because that's showing up in multiple ways in my life. And so I'm in this chapter of healing, and it's probably an always chapter, but it's self-awareness and recognition that I want to be not necessarily just and only the person that I needed, but I want to be aware of who I am and what I am, and make sure that I show up in a way for the people that I love and the people I'm the most grateful for, so that I can be who they need as well, while being authentically true to who I am. And I hope this is causing some self-reflection for you. You can probably hear some emotion in my voice, and if you're watching, you can probably definitely see it. And I really want to walk you through the work that I've been doing since the last couple of weeks, whenever this episode kind of got brought to me, and really, how do you get there? How do you start showing up for that person? And how do you make sure that you don't pass down something that you don't really want to pass down? And the first step is giving yourself some grace. So practicing some self-compassion, acknowledging your feelings and being okay with it. Understand where it came from, but taking responsibility. This idea of giving credit for who you are today and for how you feel about yourself, blaming other people doesn't really help you own that and accept that and move on from it. And so there's this beautiful balance of accountability and responsibility. So it's not your responsibility that you were treated a certain way when you were younger, or that you went through terrible experiences, or there was devastation in your life. It's not that was your fault, right? This fault and responsibility is probably the better way to say that. And so it's not your fault that those things happened, but it is your responsibility to acknowledge it and heal from it, and then break the pattern. You'll hear me say that a couple times. But giving yourself some sort of positive talk that you can grow, you can move on, you can tell yourself a new story, you can be the person that you needed. Just those thoughts alone will help you move away from feeling stuck in that space. And one of the best ways to be unstuck in that space is for forgiving yourself for not being, up to this point, what you've needed when you were younger, but also forgiving the people who didn't give you what you needed, or didn't love you the way you needed to be loved and all that. But like carrying that resentment and being jaded by that will be the number one thing that will prevent you from moving on and moving forward with it, because you carry that with you. So forgiveness doesn't mean acceptance. It doesn't mean that you're condoning the behavior. Forgiving means you're not going to hold on to it. So learn to forgive yourself for not up to this point being what you needed to be. Even if you have kids, even if you're in a relationship and you're not being those things, forgive yourself, because that's the first thing we have to move out of the way so that we can start loving ourselves the way that we need to be loved, so we can start loving other people the same way. The second piece is this: as you can tell, this is a trying chapter of kind of really self-discovery, self-awareness, and understanding. We need people around us who are going to accept us through this chapter, and who are going to encourage us and support us and uplift us. I cannot say this enough. I probably have said this on every single episode, but the people we surround ourselves with matter. Reminding you who you are, reminding you of maybe when you start to show old patterns. Be around people that support you, that uplift you, that have a growth mindset, that believe in you, that challenge you, but that love you no matter what, because those people will help you recognize that you are enough. And once you recognize that, you'll start to be everything that you've always meant to be, and probably everything you've always been, you've just forgotten because of some of these things that we've talked about already. And the third piece to really the journey that I've been on while making this episode, creating this and getting into this headspace and heart space, is embrace this idea of personal growth, taking responsibility, not focusing on fault, but really be committed to breaking the pattern. Whatever environment you grew up in, again, there are natural tendencies to that, but break the pattern. You have the choice and the chance to be the first person who sets a new path, paves a new path, creates a new pattern for you, for the person that you're in a relationship with, for the family. It doesn't have to always be the way it's always been. You can make a choice today to love yourself enough to create a new path, a new direction that you're proud of. So taking that responsibility back and not relying on fault for who you are and what you are is an important step in this process of being who you needed when you were younger. So the most important thing here, as we talk about kind of how do we recognize this and how do we embrace this, is what are the steps we need to take. And I just kind of walked you through some of the things, but really the what you can do now, first of all, is to choose grace over a grudge with yourself and with other people. Once we start to settle in grace, we start to heal in a new way that allows us to transform and change who we are and what we are. The second thing is to reflect and journal. Be patient with yourself, but really stop and think. This is what I had to do to kind of run through my list of things I just told you about. I need to stop and think about what did I need then, but it also made it easier for me to realize what I needed then by who I want to be now. And so understanding that how we were brought up will often determine, if we're not living with intention, will often determine who we become later. We see it a lot in our own lives, I'm sure. If you kind of stop and look at your parents or your family or your siblings, you probably look and sound similar, but you have the choice to make a new pattern. So just reflect back on who you are, what shaped you, and then how do you want to be shaped moving forward, and how do you want to shape lives that you still get to have in your life? And then journaling that. So that reflection and then journaling it, getting it down on paper really matters and makes it more real for us. And then share that, share that with the supportive people that you have in your life, and tell them about the journey you want to be on, and help them understand what you needed. And maybe that will help them understand you and love you in a way with more intention. So I hope this episode's been meaningful for you. Get into your feels. Feelings are energy and emotion that we can use for good to maybe transform the rest of your life. And maybe you needed to hear this, and maybe somebody else needs to hear this. And so share this episode, share your journey with more people. We don't have to do everything in solitude. Allow people to help us, allow people to actually get into the deeper parts of us, so that we can have everybody have the chance to love all of us, not just the parts that we love or the parts that we're willing to share with them. Hope this episode's been meaningful. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet. And I will remind you, like I do every episode, that you always have the power and the choice to reshape your mindset, live with intention, and look at the world through a grateful lens. Until the next episode, never stop.